Today is the first day of the June 1984 7-day retreat. Right at the beginning, something about this bell that people strike, signaling to the people in the waiting line that this meeting is over. Notice that one strike of the bell is sufficient. It can be heard. If you find that the strike or stroke has been too weak, then strike it again louder. Seems to be a case where two doesn't make any more than one. As far as a signal is concerned. During listening, it's all right to move, to change the posture. If you find it's becoming too painful or crampy to sit in one posture, to loosen it up, change the legs. The only question is, can it be done very quietly, unobtrusively? Keeping in mind the silence of the place and the possible disturbance to others. We talked about it yesterday briefly in the opening talk. It's an amazing effect that listening to the noise one makes has upon the noise itself. It diminishes with the listening, with the attention. Unless one likes to make noise hear oneself, that one can observe too. Very often when we do move loudly and one observes that, one finds one wants to hear oneself. Sort of make sure one exists as something or somebody. If that is clearly seen, there's no need for it. Because it is such an enclosure, such a barrier to freely listening to everything that's happening. Without this narrow existence of me. In listening to a talk, can there be the absence of judgment, comparison, just an openness of receiving? And more than that, can one look for oneself whether what is said is so? Can it be observed, seen within oneself? That's the crucial thing, not to remember words and incorporate them into one's vocabulary, but to open up to what is actually happening within oneself and to see what has been ignored or slighted over or never acknowledged within oneself. What is talked about is never meant personally, even though one may receive it that way. It is, we speak about what happens in human beings. One often feels so unique, either proudly or dejectedly about one's characteristics. This identification with what's happening in oneself prevents really to look at it very, very profoundly, openly, vulnerably, which means non-defensively. And actually, in seeing something within oneself without any defense, out of that doesn't arise guilt, but relief, release. The release of understanding deeply the workings of the human mind and body. When a question is asked by me, it is not asking anyone to answer it. I don't know the answer myself. Questioning means opening up the topic, the field, the thing, to looking at it without knowing the answer, but coming in touch with the whole thing, with a question, with a problem. In a case like this, looking and questioning together. Not as someone who has the answers and imposes this question to others who must learn that this is how we live and operate in schools. But this is not a school. In this connection, I'm remembering to mention what sometimes makes people wonder what I do when I walk through the hall. People who ask this question usually wonder whether their posture is being evaluated. Or whether I try to discern things about them. It's not easy for anyone to sit for long hours in one place, so I get up at times. I could walk at the lake, but since we're here together in this whole thing, I come in here to spend at least a minimum of time with everyone here. Not to evaluate postures. If your posture gives you a problem, then please bring it up in the meeting and we'll talk about it or examine it. It's just being together as friends. You may think this is just said, but it is not just said, it is so. As friends who don't evaluate each other, but share together. Live and work together and question together, are together. So standing with someone or with everyone, there is no difference there between me and you. Good portion of the talks use koans. I'd like to say something about that too, so it may clarify. Koans are not used to perpetuate or support, sustain a tradition of koan study. To make you familiar, to familiarize yourself with the tradition of koans. If you wish to do that, you can read them yourself. Maybe many of you have done it and put it down again. But a koan is used or picked because it is a take-off point to discuss things that concern all of us, superficially and deeply. Also, at the same time, question the Koan. Not ever take anything as holy writ, not to be touched, not to be questioned. Actually, traditionally, that what Koan served. Someone else, a teacher of another generation or a contemporary one, would negate the response of the other that was given in the Koan, or wipe out the whole Koan. So as not to become attached to sayings and doings of the teachers, which we're so prone to do because we want to get attached to something. Lean on someone who we hope knows, because we're so unsure of ourselves, so confused. Then out of this grows this dependence on someone we hope knows for us, and we can sort of derive some certainty from another person, either historical person or contemporary person. But what we need to do is to think, look, observe, and understand for ourselves. This is what this work is about. It's about nothing else. Not to present models, live or dead models, after which to mold oneself. This is what is ailing us, that we're nothing but molded people. I shouldn't say nothing but we are very, very conditioned and molded, and not often aware of it at all, of how we react and respond in automatic ways. So whatever is said or done, can it open up this conditioning, bring it into awareness so that it loses its grip and power? And there may be some spontaneous seeing and acting which is not according to principles or the past experiences that one learned. The koan today is from the Mumonkan, number 14. It is called Nansen Kills a Cat. The text before me is Comments on the Mumonkan by Zenkei Shibayama. Many of you may know this koan, have heard it maybe in a slightly different version. Each koan has as many versions as there are translations or authors who have collected them or commented on them. It's possible to drop what one already knows and has thought about this koan or interpreted, or how others have interpreted it, and approach it freshly. Once, the monks of the Eastern Hall and the Western Hall were disputing about a cat. Nansen, holding up the cat, said, "If you can say a word of Zen, I will spare the cat. If you cannot, I will kill it." No monk could answer. Nansen finally killed the cat. In the evening, when Joshu came back, Nansen told him of the incident. Joshu was a long-term resident there, staff member. Nansen told him of the incident. Joshu took off his sandal, put it on his head, and walked off. Took the sandal foot and puts it on the head, walks off. Nansen said, if you had been there, I could have saved the cat. I'll read it once more. Once the monks of the Eastern Hall and Western Hall were disputing about a cat. I've read and been told that Eastern Hall and Western Hall housed two different categories of residents. One hall housed the administrative staff, and the other one the ones who were studying or meditating. Why this separation isn't quite clear to me, but this is how it was. It may have been a rotation, and it's not clear whether the administrative people did not do meditation. But yet there was these different groups, two different groups in these halls, different activities, disputing or arguing about a cat. Nansen, when he saw this, held up the cat and said, if you can say a word, I will spare the cat. If not, I will kill it. If one can really actually enter a scene which is presented here, people maybe during their coffee break, tea break, sitting around, the cat walking through and arguing over it. What the argument is about, we don't know, but there is a dispute going on. And Nansen, who's the abbot, an old man at that time because he didn't start very early being an abbot, grabbing this cat and holding it up for everyone to see. One can hear the cat. And when you grab a cat and hold it up, a cat meows fiercely. Doesn't want to be picked up and held up in the air. Crying. Struggling. And Nansen saying, say something and the cat will be saved. If you can't say anything, I'll kill it. I'll cut it. An argument has been going on, a dispute. Lots of words, lots of opinions. But at this moment, as it says here, no monk could answer. We'll go into detail over this. Nansen, here it says, finally killed the cat. Shibayama later in his text goes into this word finally, which is not in every koan. He says it shows how hard it was for him and so forth. Other versions it just said, Nansen killed the cat, not finally. In the evening, when Joshua came back, Nansen told him of the incident. Joshua took off his sandal, put it on his head, and walked away. Nansen said, if you had been there, I could have saved the cat. Or another version, it says, you would have saved the cat. What is the koan about? Has many facets in it, many scenarios. The first one being this dispute among people. Why is there dispute among us? Why do we argue with each other? maybe it's difficult right now here, sitting in a very peaceful, non-confrontative environment. To wonder why one would ever argue. Or maybe one has already spent time on the cushion arguing with someone with which one hasn't argued well enough. The other person got the better of one, and if I only had said that, then he would have seen, or then I would have won. One doesn't put it so grossly, but is this what is happening when we're arguing? What is happening when we're arguing? If this question is really a question for us, for one, then maybe the next time there's an argument, at one point one will wake up to the fact that one has been arguing quite involved, with no space, just very topic-oriented, issue-oriented, and maybe allow some space to be there so one can observe why one is arguing and how one is arguing. It may spell the end of the argument, because it's very difficult to continue arguing while one is really observing seriously. But isn't this necessary that there be clarity about why we argue? Not that we shouldn't argue, that it's wrong to argue. I'm not saying that. But what is the under fabric or the fabric of argument and dispute? Because our small arguments between the two of us, or between two groups, are also maybe the arguments between nations or groups of nations, allies. One powerful nation does something and the allies feel they have to follow suit in this argument, in this dispute, because it's dangerous not to side with one's powerful allies. This happens already in a small argument among a group of people. One may take the side of someone because the person is one's friend, one wants to remain friends. Person is a strong person who is arguing, and one, not being very clear oneself, likes to take the side of the stronger. Why do we argue, dispute? What are the ingredients of it? There is the issue. But there's more than the issue. There's also maybe internal frustration, anger that has built up previously, resentment. And now an issue is there where all of this can spill over and explode, find some release. The pressure that has been building up and not let out finds release in argument, and the issue is very often of secondary importance. The release of anger and frustration, resentment, is maybe the driving force and the fuel that keeps the argument going. The pleasure of release. Then there is this ancient need to win, to be right, to be on the right side, to have the answer, to be in the know, to be superior, fairer, better informed than the other, which gives one in existence as somebody superior, somebody in the know, who knows what is right, and alleviates for that moment of when the argument seems to be swinging toward one side, one seems to be gaining ground, gives a feeling of security in that superiority. All temporary things, expenditures of energy for temporary release or temporary feeling of security or being somebody. There is in human beings also an ancient pleasure in annihilating someone. Maybe not physically, although it is happening all over the world. Human beings annihilating each other. And it has its roots, it causes very early, where as a little child one was frequently annihilated by parents who knew better, who did not respond for some reason or other, or responded inappropriately, harshly, thoughtlessly, powerfully. Notice during this last vacation, living with a family with a little child, how often a child is overpowered. At times by well-meaning parents. Maybe a medicine has to be given. Child is overpowered because it has to take the medicine. It's good for the child, not just good, it needs to take this medicine to get better. Oneself is bothered by the illness, of course. And just overpowering the child, holding him. Two parents and shoving in the medicine. This is what nurses and doctors suggest to do if the child doesn't want to take the medicine. He has to have it. He has to learn that he has to take this, or that he is not all in charge. Notice that in participating a little bit in checking back with the doctor and the nurses, that this was the answer. You got to do it somehow or other. And I don't know what the answer is, but this was gruesome. And the child screamed sometimes for 45 minutes afterwards. It was such a rage, humiliation, and fear, terror of this. What in one way, if one disregards the sexual element, could be considered a rape of a little child. So this stuff has happened to us. Many times over. And there's a reservoir of this that wants revenge. It's not all deliberate. It's not deliberate, it's automatic. And then one is very surprised and concerned and upset over hearing of people annihilating others or doing violence, forcing people, overpowering people. It may have its root in such incidents. How can it end so that it is not then passed on from generation to generation, or from one person to another within the same generation? Which it is and will be if there is no deep, profound awareness of this. And the awareness cutting through this this process of argument or dispute which wants to go on. There's a real momentum to it because it is satisfying. Satisfying at least to the winning party. It does not mean that there aren't things that need to be discussed or that one wants to find out why is something done like this. But there can be a totally different approach to discussing an issue, a question, a problem, which can happen if there isn't this need just to gratify oneself, to get release, or if this is all understood to be there, but not blindly indulged in, but aerated with attention and awareness. Then one can sit together and together probe into a problem, with no one yet knowing the answer, not knowing the answer, which is our condition. We don't even know the problem. To explore that together in a spirit of deep friendship. Because we're both human beings in the dark, not knowing the answer, not even knowing the problem, not having the facts. Often in an argument, if facts aren't available, they are quickly drummed up or fabricated or distorted. And the heat is on, so one can't get at this whole stuff. But it's not impossible to stop at one point and, with a certain sense of humor, wonder, what's going on? What are we trying to find? Are we trying to find out something? Are we just trying to work out, like lifting weights or running? Exercise the argument muscle. That, I think, can be shared by everyone who is there, because we all do it. So are we really trying to find out what a problem is and how to approach it, how to understand it? And really start out with not knowing how to solve it, realizing that one doesn't know enough facts and may never know, then that already influences the argument. If one really realizes one does not have enough facts, one realizes it's futile to talk about it. And maybe talking about this tremendous need for release of frustration, or talking about one's frustrations, would be the right approach then, not the issue, the original issue. Here in this case, two groups of people who've devoted their lives to finding out about truth. This is supposedly the motivation for a person to join a monastery. I say supposedly because it may not be. It may be to become the abbot eventually, or to get a position of power, become the head monk. Just as in our daily life everywhere. It's not different in a monastery. And yet, the professed reason of most people who join a monastery is to find truth. No, sometimes it's to serve their God, or to... I shouldn't make such a general statement. finding the truth about themselves, who and what one is what Zen work at least can be. Of course, with this tradition come concepts like true nature or Buddha nature, which is said that resides inherently or is inherently to be found in each sentient being. Buddha nature, true nature, which is a theoretical and dogmatic formulation. Because whether this is so or not, we don't know. If one already starts believing in it, then this barricades the spirit of investigation, what this is, who one is. One starts out from the belief that one has the Buddha nature, there's already something awry in questioning. There's always some goal or reward hanging in there. Very frequently, teachers have interpreted this dispute to be about whether the cat has the Buddha nature or not. We don't know whether this is what the monks were arguing in their tea break about. Or whether they were arguing to whom this cat belonged, who should be feeding it, take care of it, or have it at night to warm up the bed. But there are such disputes. There have been in almost all of the more sophisticated religious systems, religious disputes over whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul, or how many angels can dance on the tip of a pin, whether or not the cat has the Buddha nature. What is one doing when one engages in such argument? Isn't it all totally conceptualization, speaking from what one has read, imbibed, taken over from revered teachers or religious scripture sources, and now using this knowledge to combat knowledge, other knowledge? Where is the cat? This may be why Nansen just picked up this living creature over which this completely abstract argument, fight, discussion was going on. Picked it up. Yow! Yow! Say something, now say something, and the life of the cat will be spared or will be there. And no one could say anything. Why not? They were discussing freely enough for Nansen, who probably wasn't even there in the beginning, to have been drawn to this. Maybe he heard it from indoors. There was no inhibition to discussing, to talking abstractly. And here, a word is demanded. It's called a word of Zen. I don't know what a word of Zen is. Say something, he's saying. Say something. It's real. Why could no one answer? I wonder. One could have been still so involved in the argument that this is where the brain was. There was no freedom to look, no freedom from the state of argumentativeness, or of this we talked over it, wanting to win or wanting to get release. This whole momentum was still there and just suddenly blocked, but really blocked, and then nothing came out. But also, it may have been the inhibition. Now I'm supposed to say something real. The idea of saying something real is already a block. It's an idea. Not really knowing what something real is. Not seeing the cat crying there up in the air. Arguing, we don't see what's real. We don't see facts. We have opinions. We have positions which are connected with our own existence as me. And this narrow enclosure prevents the freedom of open seeing and hearing what is actually happening. And then another demand on top of it: say something in the presence of a teacher, a revered teacher. Say a word of Zen, and maybe the image, I don't know, I'm not enlightened. I don't know. I must be enlightened first to say a word of Zen. I haven't gotten there yet. All of these ideas are the wall that prevents simplicity. At this point in the Koan, Nansen kills the cat. Some people interpret this as saying he didn't really kill it, he just made the motion of killing it and then let it go. I don't know whether the issue of this koan is whether or not he killed the cat. We don't know. And if one is trying to sort of say he didn't kill the cat, then to look why one doesn't want a Zen teacher to kill a cat. Whether there is such feelings of trying to protect the tradition, which is a tradition of non-killing, non-violence to other human beings, at least by precept, by taking this precept. If one puts oneself into the position of this Nansen, one may wonder, did he feel he had to kill it because he had said he would kill it? We talked yesterday about this consistency which often besets us. It's often a net in which, as a parent, one finds oneself. One has threatened the child with something in order to bring it around to do something. And then the child does it anyways, and now what am I going to do? Carry it through with a threat? I have to be consistent, and neighbors and friends tell one that. Or can one be free of such principles and keep looking and being with the child and with oneself, and letting this being come up with a response? It may be the wrong response, but at least it doesn't come out of a principle. Which is dead, and may not at all apply to a living situation. course he could have let the cat go. Maybe he did. What is this killing? Did he kill anything? Here, at one point, Shibayama says, quoting some other master, what Nansen killed was not only the cat concerned, but cats called Buddhas, called patriarchs, are all cut away. It's very easily said. Or quoted. All attachments cut away. Whether it's really so can only reveal itself when the attachment, what one is attached to, is in jeopardy. When one may lose it or doesn't have it. When it is threatened or lost. Then is there freedom? Or grasping and groping for the next attachment? So one need not face this, the pain of loss, pain of aloneness, or rather loneliness. In sitting here, which really is daily life in a different form, all the disturbances that come up in the body-mind, what are they? What is their substance? What is their origin? Where do they come from? And what gives them fuel? Or dissipates, and I don't mean control, but dissipation, dissolution. What we think about and fret about, worry about, grieve about, what is it? Is it as alive as this moment with the wind blowing? Or is it all memories, thoughts, wishful thinking, fearful thinking? What is it? Because thoughts release or trigger emotions, the whole thing. what is alive and what is dead? What is being alive and what is being dead? Can one ever be alive to this moment? To this instant which is not in time? Which is just what it is? If one is occupied, attached to, or possessed by, if it were, memories and anticipations, records, programs, tapes. Can one see an ongoing program or tape for what it is? Just that? And the seeing not be a program? I must see, I have seen, I'm doing well. It's none of that. It's just an opening. Insight. Like listening to the wind in the trees. Without those words. We will end here for today.